Hey, Rick Sayes here. Welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where I hope to provide entertaining conversations with retailers, brand managers, athletes, executives, and others in the outdoor biz to get their stories, tips, strategies, productivity tricks, and ideas that you can apply and take your career or business to the next level. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. I've used Audible for many years now. I'm on the road a lot, and Audible allows me to enjoy the great books I discover or are recommended by friends. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/theoutdoorbizpodcast. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Start your 30-day free trial with Audible today. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to episode 53 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Today I'm speaking with Luis Benitez, Director for the Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry for Colorado. Welcome to the show, Luis.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Great to talk with you. We finally made this happen. I think we were talking about this right after OR, right?
We were, and before we started recording, when you kind of share how the days start earlier and earlier, it feels like we're getting a lot of work done by headlamp these days.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Well, you know how to use headlamps very well, I'm sure, and have a few of them.
Without a doubt.
Right.
Without a doubt. My gear shed is strong.
Nice. Good. Yep. Awesome. So what was your first exposure to the outdoors? Was it as a kid, or how did you get into the outdoor side of it? Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I tell people all the time that I was lucky enough to grow up in the outdoor industry, and it's really true.
Oh, cool.
My American grandfather, dad's from Ecuador, mom's from the United States, and my American grandfather owned a sporting goods store, a small specialty fly fishing, bird hunting shop, retail space that was literally right down the road from my grade school. So
wow.
Kind of like one of those, those pictures that you see from the olden days. I would walk a quarter mile down the road to my grandfather's shop every day.
Nice.
Before my folks would pick me up after they got off of work. And, what I really learned at a very young age, other than just specialty family-owned retail, was that these places and these spaces were really convening spots for folks to talk about things that they loved the most.
Right.
My grandfather had the normal core customers, but those core customers loved just spending time in the shop to talk about fishing, to talk about hunting, to talk about hiking, to talk about boating. And he was one of the original Orvis dealerships in the Midwest.
Okay.
So if you know anything about fly fishing, that was a fairly significant brand back in those days.
Yeah.
And so to hang out with some of his old cronies at a really early age and realize that all these folks love talking about policy and access and conservation and stewardship, that was my start.
That's
at a really
awesome.
Early age.
Yeah, a lot of conversation about life too, in those around the coffee cup or whatever it might be. That's awesome. Yeah, I spent some time with Umpqua Feather Merchants a couple of years with those guys, so I'm very familiar with the fly fishing industry. Love to fly fish, and you have some great fly fishing back there in Colorado.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm known as an alpinist and a mountaineer, but that's truly my place of peace. That's what I like to do to really unplug.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, awesome. Did you learn how to do all that, obviously, right as a kid, right? I mean, how young were you when your grandfather put a fly rod in your hand? 2?
I could literally barely handle it. He used to like to laugh and talk about how, we'd go duck hunting and I'd be more of a hazard to everybody else in the blind than the actual ducks, because I was too small to actually hold the shotgun and, the fly rod. I'd hook more willows and, I'd hook more willows than I would fish. So I definitely started at a young age. And it was just, seeing the world through his eyes and his love
That's
for
great.
the outdoors through that lens. But then, my Ecuadorian family, one of my father's brothers was an engineer by profession, but a climber by passion.
Oh, cool.
And so my exposure to the high mountains down there sort of rounded out my early education.
Yeah, that got you into the full spectrum of outdoor. That's awesome. So I'm sure your grandfather, being a dealer and an Orvis dealer and into the conservation world, got you into some nonprofit stuff. What kind of nonprofit work are you doing now?
Well, he definitely did. And the ironic thing that I tell people all the time is, they'd ask, well, who was in the shop all the time? Who did you get to hang out with? And,
right.
St. Louis is the home of Anheuser-Busch, and back then it was, Augie Busch Sr.,
wow.
From the Bush family, and Senator Danforth and Senator Ashcroft. And so there were a lot of politicos that hung out at the shop and went fishing and hunting together. And, one of the things I definitely learned from that crew was that if you're capable of being of service, that you have a moral imperative to be of service. So this idea of public service was instilled in me at a really early age. So being involved with nonprofits pretty much all the way through my career, from Outward Bound to helping to start. Back then it was Soldiers to Summits. Now it's Warriors to Summits, working with the veteran population. And then Trekking for Kids, which works with orphans all over the world.
Awesome.
It's definitely a core part of, I think, anybody, not only in the outdoor industry, but just, as a general rule of thumb, that hopefully, we'll get to a place within society that everybody feels compelled to spend a portion of their life and or their year in service to others.
Yeah, no, I support that 100%. A couple years even, or longer. I mean, it's, if you're going to participate in this community and, take advantage of all the benefits of the society, you got to give back a little bit. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was your last outdoor adventure? With a 14-month-old, you maybe don't get out that much.
Let's see. My last outdoor adventure. I mean, do you count running by headlamp at 4 o'clock in the morning?
We all do our thing.
I try to keep my hands in the guiding world. I think once a mountain guide, always a mountain guide, and it was definitely a core part of my professional track for a very long time. So having family in Ecuador, I try to pick up a trip or two in Ecuador every year.
Oh, cool.
On the high peaks or somewhere in South America. So I try to get down to Patagonia once a year and Ecuador once a year. So in terms of big adventures,
nice, that's great.
I'd probably point to my last time down in Ecuador. Guiding a few folks on some of those high peaks. In terms of closer to home, I mean, Colorado is such a playground. I tell people all the time, you can get way more scared here. You don't need to go to the Himalayas to have a whole lot of fun.
Right.
You can just look out the back door. So, there's so much rock climbing and paddling and great trail running here and mountain biking. The list goes on and on. So I try to adventure a little bit every week, no matter what's going on.
And have you had your 14-month-old out in a little running stroller or anything yet?
I have. Come on. I mean, it's you're in the outdoor industry.
There you go.
It's about all the toys.
Yeah, right.
All the toys. Yeah, I get yelled at quite frequently from my wife for, everything from, the running stroller to the stroller carriage for the bike to we actually just picked up an e-bike actually.
Oh, cool.
That has it's a long wheelbase e-bike that has the panniers, but then also the carrying seats for kids. They're coming out with really innovative stuff these days where, you can roll out with 1 or 2 kids and go to the grocery store and come home with 150 pounds of groceries and, 1 or 2 kids and still make it up the hill.
Right. That's awesome.
Really innovative stuff. And then obviously, without a doubt, her Osprey backpack is her favorite piece of gear.
Excellent.
We've got it in the front hall, and pretty much without fail, I'd say probably 3 or 4 times a week when I get home, she's over at the backpack, wiggling it and shaking it.
Come on, Dad, let's go.
Shrieking to go for a little walk.
Right, that's great. So tell our listeners a little about the Colorado Office for Outdoor Recreation. This is not so new for you anymore, right? You've been there, 3-4 years now? Maybe longer.
No, it's not. It's not so new. So the office collectively in the United States has been around about 3.5-4 years.
Okay, yeah.
Utah was first, and then Colorado. My office came along about 2 years ago. So that's definitely not new, but still very much. I like to tell people building the plane while we're flying it. It's still one of those things that Governor Hickenlooper's been an amazing leader, and an amazing boss, and really has this deep understanding of. We have to help other states figure out how to create this role.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can have a density of these offices to drive a deeper level conversation. So, by January, we're anticipating we'll have about 9 states with this role, and by spring, hopefully, we'll have about 11. And so, we're hoping at the start of the Outdoor Retailer Show here in Denver for the very first time in January to get state delegations together representing all those states. To truly start talking about what our common landscape looks like, regardless of political ideology. So there's, a lot of work to be done, but there's definitely the trajectory for these offices and these roles has been incredible and due in no small part to all of our governor's support.
Yeah, it's gaining a lot of steam. I think California is considering it as well. So,
you guys are right on the cusp.
Yeah, we're close. Exactly. Yeah. So what are give us an idea of some of the things you do on a, daily, quarterly basis. I don't. I'm sure the list is long and deep and voluminous. But what are some of the high level? I mean, it's everything from public lands to, helping the manufacturers, the retailers, all the above, right?
Yeah, I tell people all the time that if you have a slight touch of ADD, this role is perfect for you.
Nice.
I think a lot of outdoor industry folks do have, and so we in our office we try to focus on 4 distinct buckets of work. So yes, there's the economic development side of things, where you have to make sure that the economy in your state is strong. You have to understand how to not only support what it is already existing, but also be innovative and figure out where you want to go next.
Right,
so trying to capture part of the e-bike segment or part of the stand-up paddleboard segment. So that's that. And make sure that entrepreneurs have access to capital. There's all those things that come along with economic development. And then the second body of work would definitely be conservation and stewardship. My argument has always been that if you don't take care of the natural resources that we have and understand how to take care of them, not just through sweat equity and nonprofits, but funding mechanisms that will truly allow these resources to be protected well into the future.
Right.
If you don't take care of these things, that economic engine will cease to exist.
Right.
Because that engine is built on the back of these resources. So in my mind, conservation and stewardship and economic development and the jobs the industry creates, that goes hand in hand. And then the third body of work would be education and workforce training. And really what that is, what we try to focus on there is helping academia understand that we're not just a seasonal fun kid part-time economy, that we are a multi-billion-dollar industry that drives a lot of jobs and a lot of innovation. And we need academia to keep pace with our leadership needs for our talent pipeline.
Right.
Being an Outward Bound or a NOLS instructor or a wilderness instructor or a guide is fantastic, and it is a noble profession. And we also need the MBAers focused on the outdoor industry. We need master level folks that understand policy. And then we also need people that at the certificate level have a program degree on trail building, have a program degree on ski area management. So really trying to encourage academia to create some of those pieces, because the reality in our industry is that a lot of professional development and education is seated in mentorship and apprenticeship. There are a lot of folks in our industry that are very successful that don't have that normal fit in the box 4-year bachelor's, 2-year master's. And they're very, very successful. I think out of most of the economies in the United States, the outdoor industry is definitely one where you have the capacity to hack your education. And I think that's really important to celebrate, acknowledge, and also try to figure out how to fill in the gap.
Well, and hack your way into the industry based on your education, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think so all those questions are what we really try to push academia to look at. And then the last body of work that we try to focus on is the intersection between public health and wellness and the outdoor industry. I think for a long time, the data's been anecdotal, but we're really getting to this place where, take the veterans population, for instance, it's no longer just a hypothesis that veterans returning, spending time outside can impact levels of PTSD, TBI, self-confidence, reintegration into their society, their community. And I think, with organizations and academia like UC Berkeley providing hard, quantifiable data about this, that we're moving further and further into this conversation with the healthcare industry about the outdoors being prescriptive.
We're getting there.
You see things like United Outside or Opt Outside from REI. You see all kinds of efforts at the state level. And I think what we're really getting to is that, the outdoor industry will continue to have a stronger and larger seat at the healthcare industry and economy's table if we keep our hands on the wheel during these conversations. So, your original question, what does your day look? What does a normal day look like? I would say on any given day, I'm bouncing back and forth between each of those 4 quadrants.
I was going to say there probably is no such thing as a normal day.
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's good. Well, like you say, a little ADD helps, and it keeps things exciting. There's a lot of moving parts going on right now in the biz, and I think
ADD and a whole lot of coffee.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think now that we've established ourselves as an $880 billion plus industry, where people are starting to take notice, and it also impacts every aspect of life, right? I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't do something outside. Whether it's my high school buddies,
that's a great point.
whoever.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just mentioned how large our economy is nationally. Yeah, over $800 billion in consumer spending, and that translates to about 7.6 million American jobs.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now, to give your listeners a sense of scale for that, that's about as large as the auto industry and the pharmaceutical industry combined.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, think about that for a minute in terms of our collective political power,
right,
in terms of us driving policy as opposed to begging for scraps at the table, if you will.
Right.
The way we kind of treat our natural resources in terms of funding mechanisms, it's like the auto industry. If we truly are bigger than them, which all the numbers say that we are,
mm-hmm.
It's like the auto industry saying, when it comes to that machinery on the factory floor, let's start a nonprofit to pay for
exactly.
the preservation
right.
and the maintenance of that machinery.
Right. Let's build it, but let's don't put any maintenance money into the long-term budget. Let's just build it, and when it runs out, we'll figure something else out.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's sad.
So we have to start, if we are, truly at the big, I tell people all the time, if we're truly at the big kids table, we need to start behaving like it.
Right. Yeah. That's great. That's good advice. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the outdoor industry? How it's evolved, the retail side of the world, and the place where the consumers go to spend their money. I mean, that has changed. I worked at A16 as a kid out of college years ago, and that has changed dramatically, and is continuing to change. Where do you think that's going, and how what's your perspective on it?
I don't know if you saw this recent article from Bloomberg where they talked about sort of the retail apocalypse.
Yeah.
Being driven.
Oh, I've seen. Yeah, I mean, how many? It's been in Bloomberg. Many people have talked about the retail apocalypse. It's mm-hmm. almost comical these days.
Well, and you look at the closing of Sports Authority. You look
right.
at some of the articles coming out about Dick's Sporting Goods right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gander Mountain. I think in the outdoor industry, not just in the outdoor industry, but retail across the board, that landscape is changing.
Yeah.
And I think the amazing and critical piece within the outdoor industry is that, when you're driven by gear and that gear is connected to something that keeps you passionate,
mm-hmm.
there needs to be some kind of tactile touch point within the transaction.
Yeah, and an educational component, right?
Totally. So can you buy skis online? Absolutely. Can you buy, a raincoat or hiking boots online? Definitely.
Right.
You can get probably everything you can get at any outdoor retailer online.
Sure.
I think the difference is that people still want to have that bespoke information and education-driven experience.
Right. Because
getting back to my grandfather's shop,
right.
What I'm seeing and what I'm feeling is this resurgence of specialty retail,
mm-hmm.
And that there's this. It's the place where communities go to gather,
mm-hmm.
Not only for education but just also for community.
Yeah.
Just
right. having
a place to talk about what impacts them, what works best, what doesn't, and this is where your friends and your family congregate. And
right.
I'll use outdoor research out of Seattle as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Nordstrom, their CEO, who's part of the Nordstrom family,
right.
the larger department store. I have these conversations with Dan about sort of that bespoke brick and mortar experience and how can you still bring people in and allow them to touch and feel and also connect to the core of a brand identity. And their tiny home that they have on the road, kind of going from show to show or from event to event. He likes to laugh and say, I can do more with 800 square feet sometimes, I feel, than with a multi-level store.
Sure.
Just in getting the word out there
Yeah.
and having that connection to community and process. So I think what we're going to see, is landscape shifting? Absolutely. But are we going to come out the other end? I 100% believe that.
Oh, I agree with you.
What it
Yeah.
will force us to do is to sort of think about how we engage with the consumer. And I think that process has already begun.
I agree. Yeah. And it's getting back to the basics. I mean, back in the day at these outdoor shops, fly fishing shops, you would go there to hang out and talk. If you were in a new area, a buddy and I talk about it all the time. The first place we go is the fly shop to find out what's going on. And
mm-hmm.
I think the outdoor industry lost sight of that a little bit in, trying to hit the store comp for the month and do all this stuff. But you're right. You're seeing that come back. You're seeing people start these educational programs up. They're getting back to basics is what I call it, where you talk to the consumer, you educate the consumer. You may sell him something, you may not sell him something, but he's going to walk out the door smarter than when he walked in, and he's going to be a better consumer for it. So,
yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think that's that was always seen as a byproduct of the process.
Right.
Where I think now what you're seeing is that's turning into the cornerstone of the experience.
Right, because that's how we all learned. We somebody taught us somewhere along the line. You don't just buy all your stuff online, load up your pack, and hit the Sierra. You're guaranteed not to go back if you do it that way. So.
Well, and my die was cast at a very early age with some of these, heavyweight politicos, in Missouri politics, where, the Democrat, Republican, they were all in this tiny little back room on leather chairs with a little refrigerator and this old rotary phone, this red phone my grandfather installed. They called the bat phone because when the wives couldn't find anybody, back then it was a lot of guys in the industry, the wives would have the phone number, and that's where they knew where to find people. And sitting in that room and listening to these guys talk about conservation, about stewardship, about protecting these places.
Yeah, it must have been fascinating.
There was this spirit of statesmanship where, regardless of political ideology, you could have a conversation about the things that were important to all of us.
Right.
And there was no talking points, there was no script, and the thing that drove it was their passion for being outdoors. Yep. And I think these specialty retail places, it's not just a bespoke experience about the gear anymore, it's a bespoke experience about policy, about conservation, about what we're doing collectively, knowing full well that states have just as much power when it comes to some of these decisions as the federal level does. And we need to be able to have an educated conversation on what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Right. We need to put bat phones in all these outdoor retailer shops so they can go hang out again and invite these politicians in for a cup of coffee or a beer. Yep. What a concept.
And I think, you know better than anybody. Where does most business get done at the outdoor retailer show?
Yeah.
Happy hour.
That's right. End of the day. That's right. Yep, exactly. Yep. It's early morning coffee and end of the day beer.
Yep.
So let's shift gears a little bit. How can brands and retailers have more impact on the public lands issues of today? We have a strong voice with the OIA and the Conservation Alliance and a lot of those things, but it feels to me sometimes when everybody goes back home, I like to talk about the Outdoor Retailer Show as a huge high school reunion. Great event, backslapping, story swapping, super fun for 4 days. But then we go back home and we go dark for 6 months, and then we do it again, come back and do it again. Then we kind of go dark for 6 months. So what are some things that some of these folks can, I know a lot of them are already involved in, but maybe on a more grassroots level with their consumers directly?
So that's a great question. And I think one of my primary taskings right now is to help people understand that the move for the show from Utah to Colorado, we are not going to let this be just business as usual. There's too much going on. There's too much to talk about. And we want to activate in a significantly different way. And when I say that, that's not just about, putting a different color lipstick, on something that's existed for a long time. I think given our current landscape, we want to be able to talk about the things that matter to us: climate, public lands, water, and not only talk about it and, like, to your point, go back 6 months, apart from everybody and then return later. I think the redefining of OIA's university, they're focusing at a very deep level on what is being offered, by whom and how. But I also think there's this awareness across the United States that state level has much more power than we've ever given it credit for before.
Right.
And so the good news with this emerging dialogue, especially for having the shows here, is that people are kind of waking up and becoming a little bit more self-aware to their own power.
Yeah.
As opposed to coming to OR, which I think we've seen in years past, and saying to OIA or OA or anybody else, you know what, they'll take care of it. Yeah. They'll handle it. They're in DC.
Yeah.
I pay my dues.
Yeah.
And we're good.
Yeah,
I think people are seeing stuff going on in their backyard, saying, I'm going to get the information and the skill sets I need to activate deeper. And then I'm going to go home and I have to run with it now.
Yeah.
I have to run with it because my trails are impacted. My supply chain's being affected with regards to trade. The retail landscape is shifting. So I think people's, personal regional accountability is shifting rapidly. And we want presentations, panels, plenary sessions here at OR to be reflective of some of those shifts.
Yeah, so they walk away with tools. Yeah, give them tools that they can go back. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, awesome.
And starting to have conversations that I don't think maybe we've ever seen at OR before. I think, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I think for the most part that's been focused on, say, race up to this point.
Right.
And it hasn't really been focused on the LGBTQ community and what that looks like. And so to have an opportunity to have a larger conversation about all of these different topics and to create a platform for that, I think that's something that we here in Colorado are really trying to set up.
That's awesome.
To work well moving into the future.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to the show. I'll be there the whole time.
Well, I'm looking forward to your feedback when it's done.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, I talk to my counterpart in Utah all the time about this. Utah still has an amazing, robust, vibrant outdoor industry.
Oh yeah.
And they deeply need the support of everybody else.
Yeah.
So, I tell people all the time, this isn't about Utah being bad and Colorado being better.
Right.
What it's about is, okay, we have this one opportunity to tell a larger story. First move in over 20 years.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we open the door correctly. So moving into the future, we send a very clear message that this is how we operate and this is what we're focused on.
Well, and that's the beauty of the outdoor industry. Steve Barker and I talk about it all the time. It's so inclusionary. I mean, it's probably the only industry on the planet where you will embrace your competitor as a retailer, as a manufacturer, whatever, as a guide, and have a beer with them and swap stories, like you talk about your grandfather's store. Right? Everybody can have those conversations and then go out and do business. It's not so cutthroat. See, we talked a little bit about some of the outdoor activities you participate in. Sounds like it's everything. Do you have any suggestions?
Not a lot, but yeah, there's a lot of them.
Jack of all trades, master of none, huh?
Yeah.
I'm the same, and I get master of fewer the older I get.
Yeah, I mean, most of my professional career was spent as a mountain guide, in terms of a sport within the outdoor ecosystem. So I would say, high altitude mountaineering, technical mountaineering, is definitely my sweet spot. But the thing that I find fascinating about how we all cross-recreate, I call it the garage principle. Chances are that you can open anybody's garage and find a whole host of ways to recreate.
Oh yeah,
parked in there.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to me and fascinating that people self-identify with that sport that they do the most, and that's the community that they identify with, the sport that they defend, the thing that they're the most vocal about. But when the reality is, if we can define some of these bridges that connect us as opposed to divide us, the e-bike community is providing that conversation between the dirt bikes and the mountain bikes.
Yeah.
For the very first time, these two communities that really didn't get along all that well are starting to have conversations about pay to play,
right?
Who should be stickered for what, and can that go back into conservation and stewardship? How do we do that? What does that look like?
Right.
And so, to your point about sitting down and having a beer with your competitors, I think now what we're also seeing is these subcultures able to sit down and have a beer at the end of the day and really talk about what is truly of value.
The bigger picture, yeah. We're seeing a little bit of that in Eastern Sierra. The ORV guys and all the off-road guys are getting together now and coming to the table and having conversations with the wilderness guys, and it's really refreshing.
Yeah, awesome.
It's got a long way to go, but it's beginning and it'll happen. It's awesome. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get in the outdoor biz? There's so many pathways in. What do you suggest for getting in and growing your career, maybe if you're already in?
I think it's on all of us as leaders within the industry to make sure people know what's out there, number one. A lot of people, younger folks that I talk to, think a lot of these jobs, it's kind of the wizard behind the curtain. I love skiing. I'm going to school for engineering. I'd love to be a ski or snowboard shaper, but I have no idea. Do I just cold call a ski company and ask them? I mean, I think that's been the journey up to this point.
Yeah, it's you used to have you used to have to hack your way in, like I said earlier, right? You had a great career, great degree, you can do all these things, and you're an outdoor climber, paddler, whatever. You're right. Who do I call? What do I do? And it was a big hack, but there's a lot of other ways to get in.
Well, and I think what the responsibility of offices like mine, I talk to a lot of my counterparts, is that we need to educate everybody about how deep and wide our ecosystem is. So if you have a searchable database that has every outdoor company and nonprofit listed, which we have here in Colorado, and it's constantly being built bigger and bigger, a young student can go in and be like, okay, I've got a list of 15 different ski companies. And, much like, folks wanting to start out their career, then they know what their landscape looks like in the backyard.
Yeah.
So with a little bit of knowledge and then access to some senior level folks, you got to get out there and put panos on where you invite CEOs, not to a closed door session where, the general population can't attend, but open door sessions where anybody that wants to come and is interested can do a little networking professionally, exchange emails and ideas. So we're working hard to create that ecosystem here. So people feel like they understand that it's an inclusive environment and economy, and B, they can start to define what a career path could or should look like.
Yeah. I got a degree in outdoor recreation from Cal Poly Pomona and then a master's from BYU. And I was president of the Student Rec Society at Cal Poly, and there was an annual conference, which I believe still goes on. Does Colorado have something similar, state recreation conference?
Yeah, so we've got a few of them, but what we're really trying to do is actually take it down to a more granular level. So for my office, I've got an advisory council that lives at like 30,000 feet, and that's more representing the different modalities of recreation in the state. So I've got somebody at a high level for skiing, fishing, biking, hunting, boating, climbing, parks and wildlife. But then we've got regional coalitions that are seated within any region in the state that has a pretty deep economic cluster from the outdoor industry. And what we encourage all of those regions to do is have annual gatherings to do exactly what you're talking about. So we get together, express to the public what you have regionally, and then what we do for those regional gatherings is make sure that folks from other regions are also invited. So you've got subject matter experts in the room, you've got folks representing other regions, and then hopefully you've got a lot of cross-pollination about, well, I love the Colorado Springs, Pikes Peak region, but I've always wanted to work down in Durango or Silverton. Well, you need to go talk to that, he represents the coalition over there, she represents the coalition over there. So that's the way we try to address it here, as opposed to one static gathering a year. We try to take it to the region so people truly understand what's in their own backyard.
That makes sense, yeah. Because the state thing in California, this was a long time ago, we had they had a job board and job fair, so they had all the outdoor, all the recreation jobs. So back then, the outdoor recreation was, you could go the community recreation track, the outdoor recreation track, therapeutic, and I think the other one was administrative or something. But at this job fair, there was all the jobs in recreation. So you could go, talk to the folks at the city of Anaheim or the state parks.
And I would argue now, with the emergence of technology, there's this great little organization here based out of the Vail Valley. It's called mountaincareers.com, and it's sort of like a LinkedIn for jobs in the outdoor industry. So you're starting to see a lot of the cross section between tech and the outdoor industry. Very, very smart people are starting to figure out there's a way to capture these folks and define some of these jobs so people know what's out there.
Yeah,
the
folks
good news is,
I was going to say, the folks at Canberra Outdoors have a great outdoor listing job availability
perfect
board.
Example. Canberra as well.
Yeah, awesome. And do you have any daily routines you use to keep your sanity? Like, I'm sure you get up and run or do something every morning, exercise, walk the dog.
So I have a standing desk and a balance board, this fluid stance board. Joel Heath, the guy that started the Teva Mountain Games here, started this balance board company, and I love it. It feels like you're on a surfboard all day long. So that, staying on that and staying active definitely keeps me going. A routine is just spending time outside every single day.
Great.
Quiet time, not with the phone, not taking a picture, but phone's off someplace else. That definitely maintains my sanity. So I would say daily routine, spending at least a half an hour outside quietly is a non-negotiable.
I love that.
For my sanity. And not sitting all day is another one.
Yeah, right. We all need to put our phones down a lot more, I think.
And
I'm sure you have some favorite books related to outdoors. Do you give books as gifts very often?
I do, all the time.
Oh, good. Yeah, what are some of your favorites?
And my I'm definitely a student of political history, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And so, my big bookshelves at home, and I'm also still a fan of paper books, not just books.
Same.
On the
Same. I can't not have a paper book going with all the other digital stuff I got at, Audible and Kindle. I still have to have a paper book going. Just love that feel of it in my hand.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so, being a student of political history, but also exploration, hands down, one of my favorite books is probably Undaunted Courage by Stephen Ambrose, which talks about the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Yep, that was a great book.
And just sort of the expansion westward, but also politically how much heat Thomas Jefferson had to take for, cutting this crew loose with a whole lot of money.
Yeah, you can do what?
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously being a mountaineer, I would say The West Ridge by Tom Hornbein, and Willie Unsold. Dr. Hornbein is still very much a hero of mine, and my decade on Everest, his exploratory route and his mindset was never far from my mind. So
awesome. Yeah, he's a great guy. I would say,
arguably, those are probably two of my more favorite books.
Okay, we'll link to those in the show notes, as well as everything else we talked about. How about your favorite outdoor gear purchase under $100?
Ooh, my favorite. Oh, okay, I got it for you.
All right.
I've become a real big fan of sustainable light systems for tents or trails or just a picnic bench when you're trying to cook dinner. And there's this small solar light company here in Colorado called Nocero. And it stands for no kerosene. And the reason why I like them is twofold. I think these days a product not only has to do what it sets out to do and be functional, but it also has to be connected to something that with regards to social consciousness. And Steve, their CEO, I mean, the reason why it's called Nocero is that he's on a one-man crusade to impact the level of respiratory illnesses and infections in third world countries because of kerosene lighting in enclosed areas.
That's awesome.
And these little solar lights that he has, for the price point of manufacturing all the way up to the price point of purchase, they're fantastic. They're phenomenal. A half a dozen of them will light up a backcountry hut. You stick them in a window to charge up at the end of the day, then they'll, you hang them back up again at dinner time.
Oh, awesome.
They're great for a tent. I got one in the bathroom. I got one in the office. They're kind of the emergency lights all over the house.
Sure,
and
right.
They're very, very affordable.
Oh, we'll link to that. It's Nokero, is that?
Yeah, Nokero.
Excellent. All right, well, we'll link to that too. That's awesome. As we go to wrap, is there anything else you want to say to our listeners? Or ask of our listeners?
I think what I would share with all of your listeners is that when it comes to the outdoors and the outdoor industry and everything that you're seeing in the media, it's true. We're definitely in unprecedented times. But I think the one thing that stands the test that all of this is providing is that with an industry that's driven by passion and vision and focus and representative of a lot of folks that tend to do things the unorthodox way, I firmly believe that we have an opportunity to set a couple of examples moving into the future, not only for the way we treat our public lands and waters, but also how we do business. And so my greatest hope is that we all capture that moment and strive to take advantage of that entire possibility, whatever it may be.
That's great advice. Yep, we have a lot of opportunity ahead of us. And where can people find you? Is your email or Facebook, Twitter? What's your?
Yeah, I think the office Twitter handle is Co-Rec Industries, COREC Industry. So
cool.
At Co-Rec Industry would be the best place to follow us.
Awesome. We'll link to that, and appreciate the time, Luis. It's been great chatting with you.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you at OR. This episode is brought to you by Rumpel. I use my Rumpel blanket on chilly photo shoot mornings making coffee. I love it. My Rumpel blanket takes the chill off while I'm waiting for the water to boil. It also keeps me toasty stargazing at night. Get 15% off your Rumpel blanket with code OutdoorBizPod at Rumpel.com. That's OUTDOORBIZPOD for 15% off your next Rumpel blanket at RUMPL.com. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher, or go to the OutdoorBizPodcast.com, where you find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Outdoor Biz Podcast, Twitter at Rick_Saez, that's SAEZ, and my email is rick@theoutdoorbizpodcast.com. Thanks for listening and all the support, and a huge shout out to all my guests, and until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.